Hello and welcome to the latest episode in our series of Antser Subject Matter Expert Talks. In each episode, our subject matter experts come together to discuss key topics and issues currently facing the sectors we work in, from children's and adult services to education and health. Our expertise spans 30 years, and we combine best practice with innovation and new emerging technologies to lead the way in doing things better, in partnership with local authorities and independent providers.
Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Alison Alexander. I'm the Strategic Director here at Antser. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Abby Cooke, Adoption Expert, and Daniel Croft, Fostering Expert. We're here today because we're really interested in the care review, as so many people are. There's so much Twitter around it, so many comments, so much on LinkedIn, and we thought we'd join the conversation here at Antser. The review, we all know, it's designed to bring about change in the social care. What is it and how are we going to care for children of the future who end up in the care system? The review, as we would expect, is asking those crucial questions. How do we support? How do we strengthen families? How do we ensure safety? How do we move into a system that's really caring? How do we improve our delivery? How do we make it sustainable? And most importantly, how do we ensure we're accountable? And on accountable, the one bit I want to say is accountability is how are we accountable to our children and the families that we look after and take into the next generation. But the care review is, whilst looking at all those themes, it's asking some poignant questions, and we thought we'd have a look at some of those. So they're saying, so how can we tell us everyone's view of how can we provide children with stability, and not just children with stability, how do we go forth and ensure we support families so that we enable children and families, those that they come from, their birth families, to stay together. So Abby and Dan, thinking about it and those questions, what comes to mind for you first when you hear those questions?
I look at it very much from how accessible is information for supporting families. What I mean by that is how can they find support? Is it easily available? So thinking about my background in adoption, we have a wealth of support on the internet, on portals. There's lots of support networks. Social media is massive. And when you go away and think about what that structure would look like, thinking about birth families, is there something the same as that, actually looking at strengths-based and being alongside birth families? And just having looked on a few websites, the terminology is quite negative when you're looking for support as a birth family. So it just makes you wonder, if you are struggling, are there already barriers to accessing support because how things are worded? So when you look at early support, you see earlier help, and it's not easy to actually find, okay, so I'm a birth family, I want to access support. It's more about practitioners accessing it because they've got concerns. So already there's a barrier there. Whereas you think about adoption, you think about fostering, and it's very much alongside, which is great. And support networks, strength-based, who's in your network to help you, who's giving access to information, and it feels like the barriers are trying to be lowered to ensure people are accessing support to support children who've experienced trauma.
So perhaps about changing how we're reaching out,
Yes.
changing the conversation that we're having with families, and perhaps matching the conversation we have with those who are our foster carers and our adopters to the kind of conversation we have with our birth families. Dan, any thoughts on that?
I agree, and just echoing some of Abby's comments there. Looking at the fostering world, I think for birth families, there's an expectation to know these skills and have these qualities to be a parent, and we kind of take that expectation away in fostering and adoption because we say, okay, you're going to have to do this preparation training, regardless of your experience. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to jump through these hoops, and of course, that doesn't work in the real world because there is no qualification to be a parent. But that doesn't mean that we can't bridge that gap somehow. So I think for me, it's looking at what works in fostering and what works in adoption, and how could we mirror that in, even if it was online resources. I'd be that for me, Abby, is where I think you were alluding to really, in all honesty.
It feels like, if I can just jump in there, it feels like we give permission to adopters and foster carers to not know everything. But it's as if, picking up your point, Abby, about language and the negativity, we make a judgment on a birth family who's saying, I really want to know more about parenting, or they might not ask because they feel that they're going to be judged. But an adopter might come forward and say, yes, I want to do this and I need to learn more.
Yeah, I think there's an extra layer to that as well, though, Alison. It's the fact that adopters and foster carers look after other people's children.
Right.
So there's an extra layer of safety that needs to be put in place, unfortunately. So yes, I absolutely agree. And it would be very interesting to know how many people need additional support but are afraid to ask for it, particularly young parents. Yeah.
And for me, it's the accessibility, and we always talk about money, don't we? And just thinking outside the boxes. Everybody uses social media, don't they? Ways of accessing support, and thinking about, like, for fostering and adoption, you have the wealth of support network who are actually guiding and supporting one another, looking at different topics. And I mean, personally, I don't know if there is that available for birth families, or if birth families, sometimes you see different things on the internet, but is that normally guided by professionals who have pulled that together, or is that by maybe someone who doesn't necessarily have that information and maybe are quite frustrated with certain things? So how helpful is the information really for birth families accessing it?
Yeah, it feels a really important point. Sorry, Dan. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it gets me thinking even further. We don't even teach a lot of these things at school, let alone to people that become young parents or just parents in general. Even a really basic first aid course for everyone that's going through, you're planning to have a child would save children's lives, ultimately over the years. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations. How do you deliver that support to people that necessarily don't know that they need it?
Yeah.
And although we categorize adoption and fostering together, they are fundamentally very, very different scenarios. And foster carers remain highly skilled because they remain training throughout not only their preparation training but their continuous.
Yeah. It's a group of people that come forward, and then we offer one lot of training, and then we just keep upskilling them.